The text message arrived at 8:14 on a Thursday evening, and for the first 4 seconds of reading it, I thought my mother-in-law had sent me something sweet. It was long, a full paragraph, the gray bubble filling most of my phone screen, and that was normal because Patricia sent me long, warm messages all the time about the grandchildren, about Sunday dinner, about a coat she had seen that would look lovely on me. I was standing at my own kitchen counter in Naperville, Illinois, with a dish towel over my shoulder, and I started reading the message from my husband's mother the way I had read 1,000 of her messages over 19 years. Warmly, expecting warmth. The message was not for me. The message was about me. And the message was the coldest thing anyone has ever written about another human being, and my mother-in-law had spent 19 years making sure I would never, ever see it. She just hit the wrong name. My name is Joanne Hartley. I am 48 years old. I am a real estate agent in Naperville, a suburb west of Chicago. I have been married to my husband Mark for 19 years. I want to tell you what was in that misdirected text message, what I learned it was part of, and what I did over the following 2 months, including the conversation I had, alone, in my mother-in-law's living room, where a 76-year-old woman who had hugged me at every holiday for 19 years finally told me the truth with the performance switched off. I need you to understand what I believed I had for 19 years, so you can feel the size of what the wrong name took away. I believed I had the good one, the lucky draw. Every woman I knew had a mother-in-law story, and the stories were almost always some shade of awful. The cold one, the critical one, the one who rearranged your kitchen, the one who never thought you were enough. And I would sit at those lunches, listening to my friends, and I would feel a quiet, slightly guilty gratitude because I did not have a story like that. I had Patricia. Patricia Hartley was, by every visible measure, the mother-in-law other women were told to pray for. From the very first dinner Mark brought me to, 19 years ago, she had folded me in. She called me sweetheart. She called me honey. At our wedding, she had stood up, unprompted, and told the room that she had not gained a daughter-in-law, she had simply gained a daughter, and that the word in-law would not be used in her house. And it never was. For 19 years in her house, I was her daughter. She remembered my birthday with a gift that showed she had actually listened to me. She seated me at her right hand at every holiday table. She hugged me hello, and she hugged me goodbye, and the hugs were long, and they were firm, and I believed every one of them down to the floor. I loved her. I want to be honest about that, because it is the hinge of this whole story. I did not tolerate Patricia. I did not manage Patricia. I loved her. I had spent 19 years being genuinely, gratefully glad that this warm woman had decided to make me her own. When my own mother and I went through a hard few years, it was Patricia I called. I had told people, I had told them with my whole chest, that I had gotten lucky, that I had married into warmth. I had defended her too. That is the part that stings most now. Over 19 years, more than once, a friend at one of those lunches would say something a little sharp. Nobody is that nice, Joanne. What is she actually after? And I would push back. I would defend Patricia. I would say my friend was cynical, that she had been burned by her own mother-in-law and could not imagine a kind one, that not every warm person has an angle. I sat at restaurant tables and argued, on Patricia's behalf, against women who turned out to have been completely correct. I want whoever is listening to sit with that for a moment, because I have had to. The performance was so good that it did not only fool me, it recruited me. It turned me into its most reliable defender. I spent 19 years being the volunteer publicist for a woman who was, in writing, calling me something I will not repeat. There was only one thing, and I am only able to name it now looking backward. For 19 years, underneath all that warmth, I had carried a small, low, nameless unease whenever I was around Patricia. A faint sense that I could never attach to anything specific, that I was somehow always slightly on trial, that I had to be a little bit on, that her approval, though it was always given, was always also being calculated. I never trusted that feeling. That is the part I want you to hear. Every single time the unease surfaced, I did the same thing with it. I turned it on myself. I told myself I was insecure. I told myself I was the problem, that I was so unused to having a kind mother-in-law that I had invented a threat to explain my own discomfort. I told myself to be grateful and to stop looking for clouds. For 19 years, my own accurate instincts knocked quietly on the door, and for 19 years I answered the door, apologized to my instincts for bothering them, and sent them away. A text message, when it finally came, was not news to the deepest part of me. It was a confirmation. It was my instincts, finally, getting to say, "I told you so." Here is what happened on that Thursday. Mark's sister is named Nancy. She is 50, she lives in Arizona, and she and Patricia are close. They talk constantly, they always have. In Patricia's phone, I would later work out, my contact and Nancy's contact sat one above the other. Joanne, and just below it, Nancy, because Patricia kept her grandchildren's mother and her own daughter filed by first name, alphabetically adjacent. On that Thursday evening, Patricia meant to send a long message to Nancy. Her thumb, or her aging eyes, or the simple ordinary haste of a 76-year-old woman with a phone, landed one name too high. The message came to me. I am not going to read you the entire thing. Some of it I will never repeat to anyone, because repeating it gives it a second life it does not deserve. But I will give you the shape of it, because the shape is the story. The message was about the upcoming Thanksgiving, which I was hosting, and it was Patricia, to her daughter, planning how to endure me. It used the phrase, "get through it." It referred to my home, the home I had made for her son and her grandchildren for 19 years, with a small, specific contempt. It described my cooking, my laugh, the way I talked to my own children, all of it, in the tone you would use for a coworker you found tedious. And it contained, near the end, the sentence that I have not been able to put down since. Patricia wrote to Nancy, "Just smile at her like always, sweetheart. 19 years I have managed it. I can manage one more turkey." 19 years I have managed it. I stood at my kitchen counter and I read those words, and the dish towel slid off my shoulder onto the floor, and I did not pick it up. Because the word "always" told me the worst part before I had even finished. Smile at her like always. This was not a bad day. This was not Patricia being momentarily uncharitable. This was a reference to a long-running, well-established practice. There was a way they always did it. There was a routine. The warmth I had lived inside for 19 years had a name, between the two of them, and the name was managing it. I did something then that I am not proud of and do not regret. I scrolled up. The misdirected message had been sent into my existing text thread with Patricia. 19 years of sweetheart and grocery questions and grandchildren photos. But because she had meant it for Nancy, it was written as a continuation of a different conversation, and it referred back to things, and the things it referred back to made it unmistakable that this was not the first message of its kind. It was one entry in a long, long ledger. Patricia and Nancy had been writing to each other about me, appraising me, enduring me, scoring me, for as long as the two of them had had phones that could text. And before the phones, I have no doubt, they had done it with their voices. The contempt was not a recent development. The contempt was the foundation. The warmth was the building they had constructed on top of it, specifically so that I and Mark and the children would never see the foundation. 19 years. Every hug. Every honey. Every seat at her right hand. The wedding toast. Not a daughter-in-law, a daughter, performed for a room of 200 people. All of it had been, in Patricia's own word, management. I had not married into warmth. I had married into a performance of warmth so total, so disciplined, so unbroken across 2 decades that it had completely fooled the person it was being performed for. I did not sleep that Thursday night. I lay in the dark next to Mark, who did not yet know anything, and I rewatched 19 years of my own life with the new information running underneath it like a subtitle track. And everything reread. That was the sickening part. Every memory I pulled up, the new subtitle fit it perfectly. The time Patricia had complimented a dress, and I had felt, underneath the compliment, a tiny needle. I had told myself I imagined the needle. I had not imagined the needle. The way Patricia and Nancy would sometimes catch each other's eyes across a room when I was talking. A flicker, gone instantly. I had told myself I was being paranoid. I had not been paranoid. The low, nameless unease, the sense of always being slightly on trial. That had not been my insecurity. That had been my nervous system correctly detecting that I was, in fact, on trial every holiday for 19 years before a judge who had reached her verdict before the wedding and had simply been kind enough, or strategic enough, to never read it aloud. I lay there in the dark and I pulled up specific scenes, one after another, and watched them play with the new subtitle running underneath, and I could not make a single one of them not fit. There was the Christmas, maybe 12 years ago, when I had been sick with the flu and had still dragged myself to Patricia's house because I could not bear to disappoint her. And she had met me at the door and held my face in both her hands and said, "Oh, sweetheart, you came anyway. You are too good to us." I had carried that moment for 12 years as proof of how loved I was. Now I lay in the dark and understood that I had given a fevered body to a woman who, that very night, had almost certainly texted her daughter something about how I looked. There was the time my own mother and I were not speaking, and Patricia had sat with me for 3 hours in her kitchen, just listening, just being warm, and I had thought, that is what a mother is. I am so lucky. I now had to hold the possibility that even the 3 hours, had been management, that she had banked it, that somewhere there was a text that said something like, "Well, I sat through her crying about her mother, the things I do for this family." I could not tell anymore which memories were real. That is what a 19-year performance does. It does not just poison the future. It reaches backward and poisons the entire archive, every good moment retroactively in question, and you lie in the dark at 48 years old, unable to locate a single holiday you can still trust. I had spent 19 years apologizing to my own instincts for being right. By Saturday, I had stopped crying and started thinking, and I want to tell you how I decided to handle it, because my first instinct was not the one I followed. My first instinct was to forward the message to Mark with no words and let it detonate. And I sat with that instinct, and I understood why it was wrong. Not because Mark did not deserve the truth. He did, and I will get to that. It was wrong because of timing and sequence. If I made my husband the first stop, I would be handing a grenade to the person least equipped to hold it. Mark loved his mother. Mark's entire sense of his family's peace rested on the belief that his wife and his mother adored each other. If the first thing that happened was Mark reading that message, the explosion would be uncontrolled. And in an uncontrolled explosion, the cleanup falls on whoever is standing closest, which is always the wife. So I decided on a sequence. I would go to Patricia first. Alone. Not to scream at her. I am not built to scream, and screaming would have handed her, instantly, the role of the wronged elderly woman being attacked. I would go to her calmly, with the screenshot, and I would simply let her know that the performance was over and that I had seen what was underneath it. I needed to see her face when the curtain came down. I had earned that. 19 years of being an unknowing audience had earned me one look at the stage with the lights on, and then, only then, I would go to Mark. I drove to Patricia's house the following Tuesday morning, when I knew she would be alone. She was delighted to see me. Of course she was. She put the kettle on and called me sweetheart and asked about the children, and I watched her do all of it now with the lights on, and it was a strange and terrible thing to watch, like seeing the gears of a music box you had always thought was magic. I waited until we were sitting down. Then I put my phone on her coffee table with the message open, turned to face her, and I said, "Patricia, you sent this to me on Thursday. I think you meant it for Nancy." I watched her read it. I watched her face do, in sequence, 3 things. First, it did not understand, a half-second of pure blankness. Then it understood, and there was a flash of something I can only call horror, the specific horror of a person watching a thing they have protected for 19 years fall off a shelf in slow motion. And then, and this was the part I had driven across town to see, her face composed itself. The horror was packed away. Something smooth and prepared came down over it. Even now, even caught. Her first instinct, with the evidence sitting on her own coffee table, was to reach for the performance. I want to describe that moment carefully because it was the most important thing I saw all year. I watched a 76-year-old woman, holding the proof of her own decades-long deception, reach, automatically, the way you reach for a railing, for the smooth, warm mask. It was not even a decision, it was reflex. 19 years of practice had made the performance more available to her in a moment of crisis than the truth was. And I understood watching it exactly how I had been fooled for so long. I had not been a fool. I had been up against a true professional, a woman for whom warmth on command had become so automatic that it deployed itself even now, even with the curtain already on fire. She tried, for about a minute, to manage it. She said I had misread the tone. She said Nancy and she vented the way all mothers and daughters do, and it meant nothing. She said the word context. She said, "Joanne, sweetheart, you are upset, and I understand, but you are reading this all wrong." And I let her get all the way to the end of it, because I wanted her to spend the whole performance, to empty the chamber, and then I said, quietly, "Patricia, the message says 19 years. It says, like always. There is no context in which like always means anything other than always. Please stop. I did not drive here to be managed one more time. I drove here to talk to whoever you actually are." And that was the sentence that finally did it. Patricia stopped. She set my phone back down on the coffee table, and the smooth, prepared thing went out of her face. I actually watched it go, like a tide pulling back off sand, and what was left was just an old woman, tired, in a quiet house, and the old woman told me the truth. I want to tell you what Patricia said, because she did not say what I expected, and because the truth she told was not the truth of a cartoon villain. It was worse, and it was sadder, and it was more human than that. She did not weep and beg. She did not, in fact, apologize. Not really, not that day. What she did was explain, in a flat, tired, strangely honest voice, as if some exhausting muscle she had held clenched for 19 years had finally been allowed to release. She said, "Joanne, I am going to tell you the truth because you are holding the proof, and I am too old to perform for someone holding the proof. The truth is that I decided, before your wedding, that I did not think you were right for Mark. I am not going to soften that. I did not warm to you. There was nothing dramatic in it. You did nothing monstrous. You were simply not what I had pictured for my son, and I never got past that. That was my failing or my limitation. I am honestly not sure which, and at 76, I have stopped expecting to find out." She said, "But I also decided something else, before your wedding. I decided that my feelings were mine, and that I would not inflict them on my son's marriage or on my grandchildren's home. So I made myself a rule. In public, in front of all of you, I would be perfect. I would be warm, I would be generous, I would never let one cold thing land where it could do damage. And I kept that rule for 19 years, Joanne. I want you to understand the discipline that took. Every hug you got was real effort. I genuinely thought, that the effort was a kind of love. The best kind I had to give you, and Nancy was the one place I let the other feeling out, because it had to go somewhere, and a person cannot hold a thing for 19 years with nowhere to set it down." And then she said the sentence that I have had to think about the longest. She said, "I am not sorry that I could not love you the way you wanted. I could not. People cannot always do that on command, and I will not stand here at 76 and apologize for the shape of my own heart. But I am sorry. I am truly sorry that you found out, because the not finding out was the entire gift. The performance was the gift, Joanne. I gave you 19 peaceful years inside it, and the wrong name took the gift back, and now you have nothing, and I am sorry for that. I am sorry you have nothing now." I drove home from Patricia's house, and I understood that she had told me something true and something false in the same breath, and I needed to separate them before I spoke to my husband. The true thing was that you cannot command a heart. Patricia could not manufacture real love for me, and there is no use being enraged at a person for an absence. The false thing, The thing I rejected completely, sitting in my car in my own driveway, was that the performance had been a gift. It had not been a gift. A gift is something given to the person receiving it. The performance had not been given to me. It had been performed at me, for the benefit of Patricia's image and Patricia's peace, and the price of it had been paid by me. 19 years of a quiet, corrosive unease that I had spent the whole time blaming on myself. You do not get to call something a gift when the recipient is the one who pays for it. I told Mark that night. I did it the way I had decided to do it, calmly, with the screenshot, with the full story of the visit to his mother. I had been most afraid of this moment. I had been afraid Mark would minimize it, would do the thing sons do, would ask me to understand his mother, to keep the peace, to let it go for the sake of the holidays. Mark did not do that. My husband read the message and read it again and was quiet for a long time. And then his eyes filled and he said, 19 years. She did this to you for 19 years and made me think. And he could not finish it. What he understood, and what he said to me later that night, was that the performance had not only been aimed at me, it had been aimed at him too. His mother had spent 19 years managing his wife and managing his perception of his wife and his mother all at once. And Mark had lived inside that managed piece, believing it was real, the same as I had. We had both been audience. We found that out together, at our own kitchen table, and finding it out together is the reason we are still, today, an us. I want to tell you what I did and did not do in the months after, because I think the not doing matters as much as the doing. I did not declare war. I did not forbid Mark from seeing his mother. She is his mother, and that relationship is his to navigate, not mine to amputate. I did not make the grandchildren choose. I did not send the screenshot to the wider family to expose Patricia, even though for about a week I wanted to. What I did was simpler, and, I have come to believe, much stronger. I stopped performing back. For 19 years, without knowing it, I had been the other actor in Patricia's play, smiling, hugging, seeking, earning, showing up every single Sunday, working to deserve a warmth that had never once been real. I put that down. I stopped going to every Sunday dinner. When I do see Patricia now, I am polite, and I am honest, and I am cool, and I do not hug her, and I do not call her anything but Patricia. I have stopped auditioning for a part that was, it turns out, never going to be cast. The relationship between Patricia and me is now small and formal and true. After 19 years, it is finally not a lie. That is not nothing. A small true thing is worth more than a large false one. Nancy and I are simply done. She was not a bystander to 19 years of contempt. She was its other author, its trusted reader, the place the poison was allowed to pool. I have nothing for Nancy. That distance I keep without effort and without grief. A year has passed now, and I want to tell you about the strangest part, which is the lightness. I had expected the aftermath to feel like loss, and some of it did. But underneath the loss, there was something I had not predicted at all, and it was relief. Enormous physical relief. Because for 19 years, I had been carrying a weight I could not see, and therefore could not set down. That low, constant, nameless effort of being slightly on trial, of needing to be a little bit on, of working to deserve the warmth. I had carried it so long that I had stopped feeling it as weight. It had just become the temperature of my life. And when the truth came out, the weight came off. I no longer have to earn Patricia. I no longer have to wonder, underneath, whether I am enough for her, because I have her own written confirmation that I never was. And, this is the part that liberated me, that it was never actually about me. It was about the shape of her heart, which was decided long before I arrived. I cannot fail a test that was rigged before I walked in. So, I stopped sitting the test. And here is what I did with the energy. For 19 years, I had been spending a quiet, steady portion of my heart on the project of being loved by Patricia Hartley. That project is closed. And the funds it freed up, I have moved them. I have moved them to my own mother, and she and I have had the best year we have had in 2 decades. I have moved them to my friends, and to my children, and to Mark, who turned out, when it mattered, to be exactly who I hoped he was. The false family had been quietly charging me a fee for 19 years. I did not know I was being charged until the bill stopped. The real family, it turns out, had been waiting in the room the whole time, underfunded. I want to tell you about one more thing because it surprised me. About 4 months after the visit to Patricia's house, I hosted Thanksgiving, the same Thanksgiving that misdirected text had been planning around. Patricia came. I had decided she could come. Cutting her out entirely would have cost the grandchildren a grandmother, and that was not a price I was willing to charge them for a debt that was hers, not theirs. So she came, and it was the easiest holiday I have hosted in 19 years. I want to be precise about why. It was easy because I was not performing. For 19 years I had hosted that woman while running a second, exhausting program underneath the cooking and the hosting, the program of earning her, reading her, staying on for her. This year I just made the turkey. I was polite and I was cool, and I did not seek a single thing from her, and not seeking it turned out to weigh nothing at all. Patricia, across the table, was still performing. She could not stop. I think she will perform until the day she dies. But here was the thing I finally understood, watching her do it over the gravy. Her performance was now only her problem. It had stopped being mine the moment I stopped being its audience. A year has passed now since the text, and the lightness has not faded. If anything, it has settled in deeper, become the new, ordinary temperature of my life, the way the weight once had. I no longer flinch toward my phone when Patricia's name appears. I no longer rehearse. I no longer end a visit to her house and spend the drive home quietly auditing my own performance for errors. That audit ran in the background of my mind for 19 years, and I never knew it was running until the day it finally stopped, and the silence where it had been is, I think, the closest thing to peace I have felt in my adult life. I want to leave you with the 2 things this misdirected text taught me, and they are the things I would most want my own daughter to know. The first is this: trust the quiet feeling. If you are around someone, year after year, and underneath all the warmth you feel, a small, steady unease, a sense that you are on trial, that you must stay on, that the approval is real, but somehow also conditional, and somehow also being counted, do not do what I did. Do not spend 19 years apologizing to that feeling and calling yourself insecure. That feeling is not your flaw. That feeling is your oldest and most honest instrument, and it is very, very hard to fool. The people closest to you can fool your eyes and fool your ears for decades. They have a much harder time fooling that low, quiet hum in your chest. When the hum and the smile disagree, the hum is the one telling the truth. The second is this: false warmth is not kindness, and it is not a gift, no matter how skillfully it is performed or how many years it is sustained. An honest, cold person at least leaves you free to know where you stand, free to stop trying, free to spend your love where it is actually wanted. False warmth steals all of that. It keeps you auditioning, it keeps you paying. 19 years of Patricia's perfect hugs did not protect me. They robbed me of 2 decades I could have spent investing my heart where it would have been received. If someone cannot love you, the kindest thing they can do in the end is let you find out, so that you can go, with your whole unspent heart, to the people who can. If this story landed for you, drop the word "welcome" in the comments below. I read them. It tells me which stories are worth telling next. Subscribe for new stories, real patterns, full narratives, the long game. 2 small pieces of wisdom from this one before I go. First, when you uncover a hard truth about someone, resist the urge to detonate it immediately. Decide your sequence. Go first to the person who owes you the truth and see their face with the lights on. You have earned that. And only then bring it to the people who will be hurt by it. A controlled disclosure protects everyone who deserves protecting. An explosion protects no one and lands hardest on the innocent. Second, notice what you are spending your heart on, and notice whether it is ever actually received. Some of us pour years of quiet effort into being loved by a particular person, and the pouring becomes such a habit that we never stop to check whether anything is landing. Check. And if it is not landing, if it was never going to land, You are allowed to stop pouring. The heart you free up is not lost. It is just, finally, available for the people who were waiting for it all along. Trust the quiet feeling. I'll see you next time.